Right now, though, we have a special guest joining us on the hotline, Alexandra Smith. She is Executive Director of America Rising, and we're very pleased to have Alexandra with us here on the Ringside program. And Alexandra, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm great.
Well, good to have you on board. Tell our listeners, if you could, about America Rising.
Sure. So America Rising is the GOP's premier opposition research organization. So we essentially look at what an average citizen would be able to access in terms of finding things out about candidates running for office, whether that's looking at information we can obtain through Freedom of Information requests, going into county courthouses and looking through the records there, looking at all public statements and videos that are out there, and we're pulling together that research into a narrative that we can use to define and defeat Democratic candidates.
All right. Well, that's great work, and we certainly need you to succeed because we're 100 days away from the most important midterm maybe in history, and the stakes, I don't think, Alexandra, have ever been higher. So the work that your group is doing is vital. I just played for my listeners some comments from Kirsten Gillibrand, who sounded pretty radical and liberal to me, and I don't know if she's considered the most liberal member of the Senate or not, but she sounds out there. She talked about three priorities, Medicare for all. She said Obamacare didn't go far enough. She wants to make sure that we abolish ICE, which I find to be pretty amazing. And this is what she's talking about as far as an agenda with these voters at this fest that she was just at the other day, and getting lots of applause. So, are these winning issues with the American people?
So what's funny about our friend Kirsten up there in New York is that she used to be considered what's called a blue dog Democrat, someone who is a conservative Democrat when she was in the House. When she became a senator and when she decided that she wanted to maybe take a stab at running for president in 2020, she has begun this pretty this pretty blatant lurch to the left. So she's really attempted to shed those previous positions in favor of staking out these radical left positions so that she can cater to the same base that Bernie Sanders was able to animate in 2016.
So the agenda now, the Democrat Party is Medicare for all and abolishing ICE. I mean, those are two of the big planks of their platform.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you could say otherwise when their major leaders, because they don't really have one right now. They have a bunch of self-interested candidates who are looking to potentially run in 2020. Those are the kinds of things that they're talking about. And, this is really putting the squeeze on the Democrats who are running in states that the president won in 2016. Someone like Claire McCaskill in Missouri definitely doesn't want to be talking about abolishing ICE when the president won her state by more than or by double digits. So, I do think that this is where the Democratic Party is headed. It's a scary place, but it's also one in the midterms that I think could potentially be a real issue for them.
And the third plank, of course, is gun control, which she calls sensible gun reform. But, I think a lot of people don't want to see their Second Amendment rights infringed upon and worry, what could be supposedly a first step leading to more and more, limits on gun ownership. So I would assume that's just three of many left-wing planks. I'm sure they want to rescind the tax cuts, right, and possibly increase taxes. I would assume that's part of their agenda, too.
Well, Nancy Pelosi said that if Democrats take back the House, that's one of their first agenda items is to roll back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which, of course, has stimulated the economy and given everyone a pay raise that they deserve out there. And so, that's absolutely on their agenda. Nancy Pelosi has repeatedly belittled the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. She's belittled the bonuses that some of the corporations gave in response to the legislation passing, calling $1,000 bonuses crumbs. Maybe if you're Nancy Pelosi and you're one of the wealthier families in San Francisco, $1,000 is crumbs, but that's certainly not the case for most American families. And so, I think that the Democrats, of course, in a midterm election, you worry as the party in power that the other party, is motivated. They're more enthusiastic, and history would dictate that they have an advantage.
Yes,
and I think that that's certainly still the case, and that's why Republicans have to be vigilant. But that being said, when they are unable to focus on one message that's unifying and that's winning and that's positive, and they're unable to identify a leader, whether it's Nancy Crumbs Pelosi or Kirsten Abolish ICE Gillibrand, they're going to run into some problems.
Now, let's talk about how we stand right now. I'm looking at generic polls, Republicans versus Democrats. I think Democrats are 7.1 points up, according to the Real Clear Politics average. That would probably translate in enough seats for the Democrats to take control of the House if the election were held today. Is my analysis off?
No, look, I think that the Democrats definitely do have a lead on the generic ballot, and I think a lot of that is sort of historical trends, that the pendulum always swings back and forth, and now that there's one party in the White House, people start to take a second look at the party that's out of power. That being said, what we've seen with this generic ballot is that their advantage has actually been shrinking. That it used to be much higher, and now it's kind of whittling down. And, for all this talk of a blue wave that was coming and a blue tsunami that people were talking about earlier in the year, I think that people are starting to realize, the political prognosticators, that is, that the things are tightening up, and things are definitely not, as rosy as the Democrats would like to depict. They definitely have money, they have enthusiasm, but conservatives have a lot of reasons to go out there and vote, if for nothing else, than being motivated by an issue like the Supreme Court and seeing,
right,
Democrats' ridiculous response to the president's nomination of an excellent jurist in Brett Kavanaugh.
All these different factors, you talk about the Democrats having motivation. I don't know what it will take to motivate Republicans, but with the stakes so high, they should be highly motivated. Another thing to motivate them is I think the Democrats will pursue impeachment hearings if they take control of the House. Don't you see that as a possibility?
I definitely think that that's on the agenda.
And every investigation into their conduct during the 2016 election and the FISA abuse and the DOJ abuse and the spying on the president and all the different things Devin Nunes has been trying to investigate, all that goes away, doesn't it?
Look, I think that there are tremendous consequences to Republicans losing the House. I think we would start to see impeachment hearings. I think that we would see that a lot of their liberal radical agenda, whether it's, abolishing ICE or it's Medicare for all, that would start to surface. So, like I said, I think that the Republicans, even though it's an off year and people still feel pretty good after the 2016 elections, there's a lot to defend come this November.
Alexander, before we let you go, let's squeeze in a quick call, okay? Alexander Smith with us. She's executive director of America Rising, and it's a PAC that has a clear mission, and their mission is to hold Democrats accountable, expose any hidden hypocrisy. They do video tracking, they do research, they do communication to ensure that they account for every word and action. So it's quite a mission there. And our friend, WGSO colleague, Legal Jack Clegg is calling in. And Jack, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Good morning, Miss Smith.
Good morning.
I liked your new name for Senator Lurch. Beautiful name. It fits her beautifully. I'm sure that wasn't your intention, but that's where I'm going to take it. I have a question for you. And your work I was a political science major and followed politics. Your work in following and analyzing the positions of candidates is so important. It's so critical. The Democrats running in 2018 coming up, have you done an analysis or can you determine how many of them are following the socialist agenda as opposed to what used to be considered a conservative Democratic position and so forth? Have you done analysis of that? Do you have any statistics or any key races in which we should be focused on that if the Democrats win, it's not a Democrat that wins, it's a socialist that wins?
That's a great question, Jack, and I appreciate the call. Alexandra?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of races where we're seeing that the DCCC, which is the Democratic Party's House campaign arm, where they tried to intervene, much to the chagrin of liberal activists, particularly after what was the perceived interference in the 2016 elections in choosing Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And they tried to intervene in some of these House races because they were worried that liberals were going to go out and nominate Democratic candidates who sound more like socialists, and that definitely happened there was a race in Nebraska where that happened, and now you have candidates in these moderate swing districts talking about things like Medicare for all, and that's a problem. I mean, I think that it's a scary place, but that's where the Democratic Party is heading.
So as far as breaking it down as to the percentage of outright socialists versus more mainstream Democrats, it's certainly trending in the direction of the socialists, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I mean, I think that, if you look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's win in New York, she was able to oust Joe Crowley, who's been in the House of Representatives for many, many years. He was, in fact, seen widely as a rival to Nancy Pelosi, potentially in a speaker's or in a leader election come 2019. And he was upended by this young woman who's talking about, guaranteed jobs for everyone. She's talking about housing as a right. She's talking about, Medicare for all. And, now she's on the road with Bernie Sanders in places like Kansas and other places trying to support the Democratic candidates who sound more like them.
Yeah.
In these primaries. So I definitely think that's where things are trending.
Wow. Stakes are high. Alexander, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to link to where people can get more information about the work you're doing at America Rising. And hopefully we can have you back on the program.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Good to be with you. Alexander Smith with us, Executive Director of America Rising PAC.